Better small talk, talk to anyone, avoid awkwardness, generate deep conversations, and make real friends by Patrick King. Summary and analysis by Brevreds. Introduction. Better small talk, talk to anyone, avoid awkwardness, generate deep conversations, and make real friends is a guide for anyone who wants to master the art of conversation. Whether you find yourself struggling with small talk at a party, unsure of how to break the ice with a new colleague, or simply looking to deepen your everyday interactions, this book offers practical advice to help you become more confident and engaging. Many of us dread those awkward pauses or feel like we don't have much to say. But good conversation isn't about being the wittiest person in the room or knowing all the right things to say. It's about showing genuine curiosity, listening, and finding common ground. Better Small Talk shows you how to turn mundane chats into meaningful exchanges, using stories, humor, and a few simple techniques. From handling tricky topics with ease to making yourself memorable, these tools can help you connect with anyone, anywhere, and leave a lasting impression. This book isn't just about improving your social skills. It's about building real connections with the people around you. It's an invitation to put down your phone, look up, and start talking in a way that brings people closer. Whether you're an introvert or a social butterfly, the insights here can help you transform small talk into something far more valuable. 1. Breaking the ice without freezing up. Think of a time you walked into a room full of strangers. Maybe it was a networking event, a party, or even a family gathering with distant relatives. You stood there, unsure of what to say, glancing around for a familiar face or a quiet corner to hide in. Your hands might have gotten a little sweaty, and suddenly, even the most basic words seemed to escape you. Sound familiar? It's that dreadful feeling of, what do I say now? It's the fear that makes small talk seem like a chore or a necessary evil. Now, let's zoom into one such scenario, where a man named Mark finds himself at a work conference. Mark is a software developer, more comfortable with coding than casual conversations. He's at a tech mixer event. Dozens of people are gathered, most of them chatting easily with one another. Mark clutches a plastic cup of punch and stands near the snack table, pretending to be absorbed in the cheese platter. After about 10 minutes, someone walks up to him, Sarah, an HR manager who's bubbly and outgoing. She asks, "So, what do you do?" Mark starts talking about his job, but he soon realizes he's lost Sarah's interest. She's nodding politely, but her eyes keep darting around the room. Mark feels like he's blown it. He finishes his drink quickly and slips out of the conversation, retreating to his comfort zone by the appetizers. Now, what went wrong? Mark's mistake wasn't that he talked about his job, it's that he didn't create an interesting opening. He didn't invite Sarah into the conversation, he just started talking at her. The key to better small talk is to shift the focus from yourself and your anxieties to making the other person feel comfortable and interested. What could Mark have done differently? Well, instead of jumping straight into his work, he could have started with a lighter, open-ended question like, "Hey, what brought you to this event?" Or, "What's the most interesting talk you've heard today?" These questions work because they get people thinking and talking about themselves, something everyone secretly loves to do. 2. The power of small talk in building real connections. Let's look at another story, this time from a woman named Jessica. Jessica is at her friend's wedding, a place where small talk is unavoidable. She doesn't know many people there, so she's left standing alone during the cocktail hour. She watches as others around her chat effortlessly, some are even laughing, making toasts. Jessica feels like she's on the outside, peering in. She tries to strike up a conversation with the woman standing next to her. "Beautiful wedding, huh?" she says, hoping it'll lead somewhere. The woman just nods and smiles politely, then quickly turns her attention back to her phone. Jessica feels the conversation die before it even starts. But then, she remembers a trick she read about recently, one that's supposed to help make small talk smoother. Instead of trying to fill the silence with generic comments, she decides to ask a question that's a little more specific. She turns to another guest, a man in a navy suit, and asks, "What's been your favorite moment of the wedding so far?" The man lights up. He tells her about the heartfelt speech the groom gave earlier in the day, and how it reminded him of his own brother's wedding. This simple question leads to a 10-minute conversation about wedding speeches, the best places to honeymoon, and even some light-hearted jokes about the awkward dance moves they're expecting to see later. By the time they finish, Jessica feels like she's made a new friend. Jessica's shift in approach is key here. She moved from a generic statement, something that didn't give much room for a response, to a question that invited the other person to share their thoughts and experiences. Small talk, when done right, isn't just about filling the silence, it's about opening doors to real, meaningful conversations. 3. From surface level to deep discussions, how to make the leap. Let's dive into another scenario. David, a college student, is in a study group with a few classmates. He's trying to get to know them better, but every time they chat, the conversations feel shallow and awkward. It's always about classes, assignments, or the weather. David wants to dig deeper, to have a conversation that's a bit more interesting, a bit more real. One day, as the group takes a break, David decides to try something new. Instead of the usual, "How's your semester going?" he asks one of his classmates, "If you could instantly master any skill or hobby, what would it be?" This question catches everyone off guard, in a good way. They all pause for a second, thinking about their answers. One girl mentions that she's always wanted to learn the guitar but never found the time. Another guy talks about his secret wish to be a great cook. They start sharing stories about failed cooking experiments, music dreams, and even the hidden hobbies they've always been embarrassed to mention. David's simple shift in approach transforms the vibe of the study group. What was once a dull exchange about schoolwork becomes a lively discussion about passions and dreams. And just like that, they all feel a little more connected. This is what small talk can do. It's not about the surface level stuff like the weather or what you had for lunch. It's about using those little exchanges to uncover things that people care about deeply. And the key is to ask questions that make others think, smile, or even laugh. 4. The art of asking the right questions. Consider Emma, a recent grad who's just started working at a marketing firm. She's at a company retreat, hoping to make a good impression. During dinner, she sits next to Josh, a senior manager, and they start chatting. Emma tries to impress him with facts about recent marketing trends she read online. But Josh seems distracted, glancing at his watch every few minutes. Emma feels like she's losing him, and her nerves get the better of her. Instead of continuing down this path, Emma remembers a trick she learned: make the conversation about the other person, and give them a chance to share their experiences. So she asks Josh, "What got you interested in marketing in the first place?" This question catches Josh's attention. He stops fidgeting and leans back in his chair. He starts telling her about how he used to work in sales, but a chance encounter with a marketing campaign sparked his interest in the psychology behind consumer behavior. This story led to another, and before long they were swapping stories about their favorite ads and discussing trends in the industry. Emma didn't know every fact about marketing, but that didn't matter. She showed genuine curiosity, and it turned a dry, formal dinner into a lively chat. By asking Josh about his personal experiences, she made him feel seen and heard, which is the core of building connections. Josh even shared a funny story about a campaign pitch that went wrong. His team had planned an ad centered around a new sneaker line, but a typo in the slogan changed "Kickstart your day" to "Kickstart your delay." The client caught it just in time, but they had a good laugh about the idea of promoting sneakers for lazy mornings. Emma's willingness to ask an open-ended question not only made the conversation flow better, but it also helped her understand Josh's sense of humor and the lessons he'd learned in the industry. 5. Turning small talk into stories. Let's look at another scenario. Marcus, a bartender, has spent years talking to people from all walks of life. He's mastered the art of turning small talk into something more. But there's one regular customer, Sam, who's always reserved. Every time Sam comes in, Marcus tries to chat with him, but he only gets short replies. "Long day?" "Yeah, very." "How's work?" "Be busy." One evening, Marcus tries a different approach. As he sets down Sam's usual drink, he asks, "If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you go?" Sam pauses for a moment, then looks up from his glass. He talks about how he's always dreamed of visiting Japan, seeing the cherry blossoms and experiencing the bustling city life of Tokyo. For the first time, Marcus sees a spark in Sam's eyes as he talks about how he's always been fascinated by Japanese culture since he was a kid. Marcus follows up with, "That's awesome. What got you into that?" Sam tells him about a Japanese exchange student he met in high school and how they used to share snacks and stories about their different lives. This leads to a conversation about cultural differences, high school memories, and even the best local spots to get sushi in town. By asking about dreams and places, Marcus didn't just learn about Sam's interests, he helped him open up about a part of his life he rarely shared. It transformed their interactions from routine chats into something deeper, all because Marcus knew how to ask the right question. And it's a reminder that sometimes the best way to get to know someone is by giving them the chance to talk about what excites them, even if it's a small, seemingly random detail. 6. The role of vulnerability in connecting. Let's move to a story about Katie, a graphic designer who always feels a bit out of place at networking events. One evening, she's at an industry mixer, sipping on a glass of wine and wondering how to make herself more comfortable. She watches as others seem to float effortlessly between conversations, cracking jokes, and sharing stories about their recent projects. Katie starts talking to a woman named Lydia, but she feels herself struggling to keep up. Lydia seems confident and poised, and Katie worries she'll come off as boring. So she decides to be a little more open than usual. When Lydia asks how her week has been, Katie admits, "Honestly, it's been kind of rough. I'm working on this big design project, and I'm so nervous about whether the client will like it." To her surprise, Lydia doesn't judge or brush her off. Instead, she nods and says, "I know that feeling. I still get nervous before presenting a new concept, even after all these years." Lydia shares a story about a time when she completely misinterpreted a client's vision. They ended up with a neon-colored logo for a very formal traditional brand, which they had to redo entirely. They laughed together about the stress of creative work, and suddenly, the conversation feels a lot more real. By being willing to admit her worries, Katie found common ground with Lydia. It's a lesson that sometimes being vulnerable, showing that you don't have it all together, can actually bring people closer. It shows them you're human and relatable, and it makes them feel comfortable sharing their own struggles too. 7. How to keep conversations alive, the role of curiosity. One of the most important tools for good conversation is curiosity. This is something that Nathan learned while volunteering at a local community center. He was helping to run a weekly game night, where different people would come in to play board games and socialize. Nathan noticed that some volunteers struggled to connect with new attendees. They'd ask a few questions, get short answers, and then the conversation would fizzle out. Nathan decided to experiment. He found that instead of just asking people about themselves, it helped to ask questions that sparked curiosity. One evening, he asked a newcomer, "If you could be any character in a movie, who would you pick?" The newcomer, a guy named Alex, laughed and thought for a moment before answering, "Honestly, probably Indiana Jones. Always thought the idea of adventure and finding ancient artifacts was cool." Nathan followed up with, "That's awesome. So, are you into history?" This led to Alex sharing about his favorite historical documentaries, a trip he took to Rome, and the time he almost got locked inside the Colosseum after losing track of time. Nathan, in turn, shared his own stories about getting lost while hiking in the mountains. The conversation was full of laughs and shared experiences, and Alex left that evening saying he'd definitely come back next week. It was all because Nathan shifted his focus from just asking safe questions like, "What do you do for work?" to ones that invited people to share a bit of their imagination and passion. 8. Handling awkward moments with grace. Everyone experiences awkward moments in conversations, even those who seem like naturals. Let's explore how handling them gracefully can make all the difference. Take the story of John, a high school teacher who isn't exactly known for his social skills. One evening, he attends a dinner party hosted by a friend, hoping to expand his social circle. Midway through the evening, he finds himself chatting with a couple of new acquaintances, Laura and Brian, who are both quite chatty. But suddenly, John makes an awkward joke that falls flat. Silence lingers between them, and John feels his face flush with embarrassment. He wonders if he should just make an excuse and leave the conversation. But instead, John decides to own the moment. He chuckles and says, "Wow, that joke sounded a lot funnier in my head. Sorry guys, clearly I'm not quitting my day job." Laura and Brian laugh, and the tension immediately eases. Laura even shares a story about a time when she tried to impress her boss with a joke during a meeting, only to be met with blank stares. They all end up laughing at how tough it can be to read the room sometimes. John learned that embracing awkward moments, rather than trying to brush them under the rug, can make you seem more relatable. It's like saying, "Hey, I'm human too." It's a reminder that people don't expect you to be perfect. In fact, a little bit of self-deprecating humor can make you even more approachable. 9. Using stories to make yourself memorable. Now let's talk about the power of stories in conversation. People might forget facts or data you share, but they rarely forget a good story. Rebecca, a freelance writer, learned this during a job interview. She was trying to impress the editor of a major magazine. The editor asked about her experience with tight deadlines. Instead of rattling off her resume, Rebecca decided to tell a story. She shared how, during one intense week, she had to finish an article about an emerging artist in just 48 hours. She spent a night driving 3 hours to the artist's studio, interviewing him until dawn, then drove back to meet her deadline. She laughed as she described how she downed gas station coffee to stay awake, and how the artist's dog chewed through one of her shoes during the interview. The editor listened intently, chuckling at the humorous details. He saw that Rebecca didn't just have the skills, she had passion and a knack for making an adventure out of her work. Rebecca later learned that it was this story that made her stand out from other candidates. It showed her creativity, resilience, and the lengths she would go to get a good story. When you share a personal story, it gives others a window into your experiences, your values, and your personality. It turns you from a stranger into someone with depth, someone who's worth remembering. And the best part? It invites others to share their stories too, creating a bond. 10. How to navigate tricky topics. Let's look at another scenario. Abdul, an accountant, is invited to his colleague's dinner party. The group is having a good time, but then the conversation drifts toward a touchy subject, politics. Abdul can feel the tension rising as people start to share strong opinions, some of which clash. He knows that if this continues, it could ruin the friendly atmosphere. So, Abdul steps in with a tactic he learned over the years, pivoting the conversation with curiosity. He says, this reminds me of a debate I heard on the radio. They were talking about how certain historical events shape the way different countries view politics today. It was really interesting hearing perspectives from other cultures. Then, he asks the group, what's one place you visited that surprised you in terms of how people there saw the world? This shift in focus takes the heat out of the conversation. Suddenly, people are sharing stories about their travels, like when Karen visited Japan and was amazed by how polite and orderly everything was, or when Tom went to Greece and found people debating philosophy in cafes. The conversation moves from a potentially heated debate to a lively exchange of stories and experiences. Abdul's approach worked because it acknowledged the tension without adding to it. He shifted the focus to something everyone could enjoy discussing. By steering the conversation in a new direction, he managed to keep the peace and learned a few interesting travel tips along the way. 11. The unexpected benefits of listening. There's another important aspect of small talk that many people forget: listening. This might sound simple, but true listening means being fully present and showing genuine interest in what the other person is saying. Let's explore a moment where this played out for Maria, a social worker. At a neighborhood gathering, she met an elderly man named George who seemed lonely and a bit out of place. While others politely greeted George, most moved on quickly, thinking he didn't have much to say. But Maria sat down next to him and asked, "What was your favorite thing about growing up in this town?" George hesitated at first, but when he saw Maria's genuine curiosity, he began to open up. He talked about how he used to play baseball in the empty lot where the new supermarket now stands, and how he and his friends would ride their bikes down streets that didn't even have streetlights yet. He described a summer festival that used to take place in the town square, with a Ferris wheel and cotton candy that he could almost still taste. As he spoke, his eyes lit up with memories. Maria listened intently, asking questions here and there like, "How did you meet your best friend back then?" Or, "What was the town like when the old train station was still running?" George shared stories about the adventures he had with his childhood friends, and how the town had changed over the years. By the end of the evening, he had a big smile on his face, and Maria could see he was grateful that someone had taken the time to listen. When Maria left the party, she realized that listening had done more than just fill the time. It had made George feel seen. It turned a casual chat into something meaningful. And she found herself genuinely enjoying the stories he had to share, learning things about her town she never knew. Listening isn't just about waiting for your turn to speak. It's about giving others the space to share a part of themselves. It's about those follow-up questions that show you're paying attention and care about what the other person has to say. And in return, you often get to hear the most incredible stories, ones that stay with you long after the conversation ends. 12. How to make the most of unlikely encounters. Let's move on to David, who works at a large company and often feels isolated in the big corporate environment. Every morning he stops by the same coffee shop for a latte before heading into work. He usually just grabs his cup and leaves without much interaction with the barista, a young woman named Mia. One day, though, there's a long line, and he's stuck waiting. Mia looks up, gives him a smile, and says, "It's always crazy busy on Wednesdays, isn't it?" David, instead of just nodding or making a quick comment, decides to engage a bit more. "Yeah, I've noticed. Do you ever get a break on these days?" he asks. Mia laughs and says, "Not until noon, but I'm fueled by all the coffee I can drink until then." They share a few more words, and by the time David leaves, he feels a little lighter. Over the next few weeks, their chats become more regular. David learns that Mia is studying graphic design at a local college, and that she has a side project creating custom illustrations for small businesses. One day, when the coffee shop is particularly slow, Mia shows David a few of her sketches. David, who works in the marketing department, is impressed and tells her about some potential freelance work at his company. Mia eventually lands a few projects through David's connections, and their daily small talk turns into a friendly mentorship. David learns that by making the most of small, unlikely encounters, like a morning chat over coffee, you never know what opportunities might arise. He found a way to break through the walls of corporate life by simply engaging with the people he saw every day. Mia, in turn, found a mentor and a new set of opportunities, all because of a single question that turned a rushed coffee run into a connection. It's a reminder that sometimes the most valuable conversations are the ones we least expect. Conclusion: actionable steps for better small talk. Now that you've seen how small talk can become a gateway to deeper connections, it's time to put these ideas into practice. Here are some simple, actionable steps to help you transform everyday conversations. 1. Start with curiosity. Ask open-ended questions. Example questions: what's the best trip you've ever taken? Or what got you interested in your job? These kinds of questions give others the chance to share stories and experiences, creating a richer conversation. Aim to listen more than you speak. Let their answers guide your next question. 2. Practice active listening. Give your full attention, make eye contact, and nod to show you're engaged. Avoid looking at your phone or getting distracted. Use follow-up questions. If someone shares something interesting, dig deeper. For example, what was that like? Or how did that experience shape you? Active listening isn't just about hearing words, it's about understanding the emotions and experiences behind them. 3. Share personal stories. Don't be afraid to share little stories from your own life. Stories help others see who you are and create common ground. Example: instead of saying, "I like hiking," try, "I went on a hike last month, got lost, and had to follow a deer trail back. It was a little scary but fun." This makes you more relatable and memorable. 4. Embrace awkward moments. If a joke falls flat or there's a pause, don't worry. Acknowledge it with humor. "Well, that didn't land, did it?" This shows confidence and helps break the tension. People appreciate honesty, and they'll respect your ability to laugh at yourself. 5. Notice the small opportunities. Look for moments throughout your day to strike up a conversation, whether it's with the barista, your colleague in the elevator, or a neighbor on a walk. You never know where a simple, "How's your day going?" might lead. It could be the start of a new friendship, or even a valuable opportunity. 6. Be vulnerable when it counts. Share your struggles or challenges in a conversation when it feels right. This can turn a surface-level chat into a more meaningful connection. Example: instead of always presenting a perfect image, try saying, "Honestly, I'm a bit nervous about this new project at work." It invites the other person to relate and share their own experiences. 7. Practice makes perfect. Set daily goals. Set a goal to have one meaningful conversation each day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. This could be with a coworker, a neighbor, or someone new. Reflect on these interactions, what worked, what didn't, and how you felt afterward. This will help you improve and feel more comfortable over time. 8. Use humor wisely. Don't stress about being the funniest person in the room. Instead, look for lighthearted moments and find humor in everyday situations. A simple smile or a lighthearted comment can make someone's day and break the ice for a conversation. 9. Find common ground quickly. Focus on what you and the other person have in common. Shared experiences like favorite movies, hobbies, or memories can create an instant connection. Example: I just started watching that show too. What do you think of the latest season? 10. End on a positive note. When wrapping up a conversation, leave on a positive note. It was great chatting with you. Or, I hope you have an awesome weekend. This makes you more memorable and leaves a good impression, making the other person look forward to talking to you again. Take these steps home. Practice these tips in your daily life and see how your conversations begin to change. Remember, the goal isn't to be perfect or to impress everyone you meet. It's about being curious, open, and genuine. Small talk isn't just about filling silence, it's about building bridges between you and others, one conversation at a time. With a little effort and a lot of listening, you can turn everyday chats into opportunities for real connections. Thank you for completing another BrevRead video. Like and subscribe to see more of our videos. If you have a particular book that you would like us to summarize, please share it in the comment section below.